Welcome back. In this video, I'll go over general considerations, as well as talk about some mini games toward the end. The first consideration is simple, but it can't be overstated. That's good old-fashioned practice. Do some form of healing at least twice a week, so you're not rusty for raid night. PvP, or dungeoning, or pugging old raid content, all count. Think of that as tossing the football around in the backyard. Next is watching footage of yourself. Now, I've mentioned this before. Find moments when your footwork caused you to take unnecessary damage, or when you trailed too far behind, resulting in line-of-sight deaths. Maybe you'll even notice yourself getting silenced or feared because you simply didn't hide properly. The observations you can make here are endless. The third consideration is excessively overhealing in easy encounters, however you define easy. That hurts your habits, just like having bad posture because you're walking around in Walmart. Really, you'll never be your best if you're only trying when it's important. So stay disciplined. You want a nightly overhealing of about 50% on renew, and around 25% on the rest of your spells. That'll average out to around 30 some odd percent. Now, at the risk of sounding like I'm speaking out both sides of my mouth, I have another tip. Let's call it 3B. That is, aim to be when the boss dies. Sometimes that means a little spending spree down the final stretch, which, yes, could turn into overheal, but the end of the fight is the most important part to survive, since so much time has been invested to get there. I guess think of it as it's better to overheal toward the end than up front. But really, you don't really want to have any leftover mana. That's just wasted intellect. The next consideration is for those whose play style results in lots of overhealing, as well as being notoriously before the fight is over. Try swapping out some of that plus healing gear for plus spirit. Gross, right? But you're clearly wasting some of the plus heal anyway, and the extra regen couldn't hurt. In my opinion, there's just way too much emphasis these days on stacking stats that simply don't fit your playstyle. Number 5, invent 2 of you. That is to say, develop a relaxed mode and a focused mode of yourself. That relaxed mode should be an underhealing mode. Yes, underhealing mode. In which you patiently and deliberately keep party members around 60% health. That's an important skill, especially for those expensive fights like Saffron. Such a state of mind also flexes your confidence in your I got this muscles. The better you are at that technique, the harder it'll be to overwhelm you. The second persona should be forcing everyone to full, which shows your power and decision-making skills regardless of mana spent. What's important here, though, is knowing how and when to toggle between those two frames of mind. It's probably easier for me to answer with context, so leave a message below and I'll do my best to articulate what I mean there. The sixth consideration is taking on extra duties. Like being the one who shackles or mind controls on a gimmick fight. Not only does that force you to learn extra mechanics, but it demands that your regular duties are committed to muscle memory fully. Take comfort in being uncomfortable. 7. Improve your spell profile, which I define as the blend and ratio of the spells you cast. Not the ones you're supposed to cast, but the ones you actually did. Do so for each boss fight by swapping your go-to heal for the right or correct heal. You can identify that right or correct heal from various boss guides or the log leaderboards, or just lots and lots of practice. Keep in mind, you can ignore all of that if your role on one of those boss fights is sort of a niche role, sort of maybe that gimmick role. The bottom line is, you've got to ensure that you're being a productive and contributing member of that healing core from start to finish. Here too, if there's an example that gives you doubt, name it in the comment section. I'll provide my spell profile advice. Next, your most frequent cast spells should not have key modifiers like Shift or Control or Alt. They should be either bound to 1 through 4 or bound to left, right, or middle click. The goal here is to make easiest those things you do more often by using the fewest physical movements possible. As your spell profile changes and matures over months and months, rebind despite the temporary discomfort. Just never do so before raid night starts. You need those habits to form. Number 9, yummy innervate tips. So pick a feral druid before you get started. Exchange those pleasantries and chat a bit. Test a macro that encourages safe cast of innervate. Something like, hit me when you can, or whatever. Once you get that innervate, equip your spirit staff, unless you think you'll forget to take it off like I do. And then ABC, always be casting. With enough spirit, you probably can't spend the mana faster than it replenishes, because on top of the 400% spirit regen, Innervate also locks you into that 5-second rule regen rate, which is your non-casting regen rate. Basically your regen at rest for the duration of the Innervate, so that's like 20 seconds. So go all out. I like this next one. If you have game sound effects enabled, there are only 2 that you should memorize: Innervate and Clearcast, since both demand that you spend your upcoming time differently. You can basically ignore all other sparkles and noises. 11. Your only healing spells should be Binding, Hellstones, First Aid, and Desperate Prayer. Maybe a Renew. Once you start monitoring this, you'll see how much garbage you're really eating. If you spend more than a GCD on yourself, you're spending too much time or getting into too much trouble, so fix that. 12 is stress test yourself by trying to assemble low DPS or those meme spec groups, or maybe craziest is a CC-less group. That won't be fun, but it'll certainly teach you threat management. Number 13, determine your group's pace in the first 5 minutes. If a tank is being very measured, ask him to at least put on some DPS plate to offset the delay and spice things up a bit. Or, if he seems a bit reckless, prepare to spend your time pre-shielding bystanders and getting as close to 100% mana as possible between pulls. 14, invent and play some minigames. So, try having a only hots night or instacasts only night, where you really do something that's uncomfortable. Maybe see how long you can go without waters or potions. There's also times where it makes sense to try seeing how many wand or melee swings you can get between heals. And if you're really feeling bold, see if you can weave some DPS, maybe even pull aggro. Naturally, these games are dangerous and will cause your party members to die, so have a strategy and be ready to explain yourself if things go awry. Obviously, this isn't meant for raid night either. The goal here of these minigames is to intentionally put yourself in a state of disadvantage, which forces good budgetary awareness. And the moment you spend climbing out of the hole you dug for yourself is how you're getting stronger. Outside the game, this is probably a 15th consideration, and maybe the weirdest, but try your hand at some reaction time games, whether they're computer-based or playing cards, whatever. The hand-eye coordination and that flash thinking you gain doing those exercises really benefit you more in-game than any weapon upgrade or talent point you can find. Although that's all I have for today, feel free to mention anything that you feel I've missed.